Aloha, everybody. Welcome back to the Wall Street Coach podcast. I'm very happy today to have a female visit my podcast, and her name is Danielle Shay. Welcome to my podcast, Danielle.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy that you're visiting. We don't have enough women representing in this entire beautiful community, and I love the men, but it's just nice to show everyone that women are successful traders. So I'm so happy that you're here today.
Thank you. I'm enjoying being here and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I want to tell you all a little bit about Danielle, and I'm going to let her do that as well. But I do just want to say part of her expertise is that she used to be a teacher. So her ability to teach is already established. And I'm kind of curious if you're willing to share just you have this mantra, if I can do it, you can do it. So just tell me and our listeners a little bit about how trading even showed up in your life to begin with.
Well, the reason why I always say that is because I was never really good at math. I was never really good at science. I went to college. I was planning on going to law school afterwards. And then I ended up, I wanted to travel. I was young and I wanted to go and live in Costa Rica. And so I taught English as a second language. And I was planning on doing that for a while before I went to law school. But then, as it turned out, I ended up falling in love. I had a baby and I wanted to stay home with my baby. Teaching wasn't really going to cut it. I ended up becoming a single mom when I left my son's father, and I needed a way to make more money. And it was at that point where my dad said, "Why don't you try options trading?" And thought he was completely crazy. But I, wanted to try something because I wasn't willing to put my son in daycare. And that's what I ended up taking a stab at. And what do you know? Here I am.
How long ago was that?
2013.
Wow. Wow. So are you willing to just share what that journey was like for you? You can go as deep or as, surface as you want, but I just feel there's not enough traders who get to understand. They think they're the only ones who perhaps have some struggles, or just a little bit about how that journey unfolded for you would be amazing to hear.
Well, it was incredibly difficult. I mean, like I said, I've never been great at math or science. I've always been much better at the artsy areas of school. I've always been really studious, though, and I love to read and write and recognize patterns. And so I started learning online. YouTube trading rooms. I went into the trading room at Simpler Trading and I just kind of approached it like a second degree. And I primarily looked for patterns instead of looking at the numbers because I don't know, I hate to say like stereotypical women kind of thing, but the numbers just made my mind jumble a little bit unless they have dollar signs in front of them.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you worked with how you already knew you were drawn, what it kind of turned you on and made sense to you. I love that. So keep telling us more. So you started to kind of look for the patterns, and what was that timeline like for you?
I think at the beginning when I was first starting to learn, what are options and the Greeks and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it was really overwhelming for me. I didn't enjoy it at all, but I was looking for, it was an ends to a means, right? It was
Wow.
like, how can I support my child? How can I work from home? If this is something that could allow me to do that, I'm going to do it, even though I don't like it very much. And
Yeah,
so that's
sure.
how it was in the beginning. But then once I became much more familiar with recognizing technical patterns, I realized, oh, this is something that I could be good at. And if I focus on the areas that I'm good at, which is pattern recognition, and then take things step by step, break it down in kind of a teaching mentality. This is something that I could do. And so then when I am teaching others, that's how I teach other people, is starting from the beginning, step by step, focusing on the patterns, and focusing on the rules as well. So
how do you stay true to those rules? We both know lots of traders struggle with staying true to their own rules. What is it that helps you stay true to yours?
the thing that helped me the most was learning Fibonacci. So I learned Fibonacci analysis from Carolyn Borodin, the Fibonacci queen. And before that, I was really struggling because, I was in different trading rooms, learning from people online, and, everybody wants to talk about the exit. And everybody wants to talk about, how much money they made, but it's like, okay, tell me step by step how you did that with a way that you can remove your emotion from it. Because as a woman, I'll admit I'm a little more emotional than maybe some of the men out there trading. And like, that's something that I really have to work on with my trading, right? And so you have to have a method of doing that, of removing that emotion. And so for me, when I learned Fibonacci analysis from Carolyn, that was the method that I could use, because I could say, you know what? The level's right here. If the level breaks, it's over. I'm out. It's not, oh, I'm so terrible. I'm an awful trader. I lost money. It's, hey, level broke.
Yeah.
When you're reaching a target, it's the same thing. If you reach the first target, you can take half off. You can choose to hold it to the second target, and, you just look at the lines on the chart, focus on the levels. That helps you remove your emotion. And it gives you a system that you can rinse and repeat as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you find in the beginning that not being thrilled with it, feeling like, okay, this is a means to an end? How long did that period last for?
2 years.
2 years. It's a long
2
time.
years of torture.
Yeah, yeah. And then the light of day, when you were like, wait a minute, I actually might like this, came over time, or did it kind of just hit after 2 years was up?
I was about to quit, honestly, because I found it to be really difficult, and I just found it to be not that enjoyable either.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just randomly ran into Carolyn at a bar at a trading event, and I told her, this isn't going to work for me. I can't do this anymore. Like, it's now or never. And so she ended up at that point, she said, okay, I'm going to help you.
Wow.
And I need you to just try to take this analysis and add it on to what you're already doing and see if that helps. And so that was actually what made the major difference for me. And I spent the next, really 6 months just studying everything about Fibonacci and technical analysis. And it was at that point that I finally was able to kind of get past the emotional highs and lows, because when you're a single mom with a 2-year-old
Oh, yeah.
and you're, losing money trading, and you're not working because you're trying to learn how to trade, and you're broke, like, it's very stressful. So,
Had to be.
so after, it was finally when I started making money and I realized, okay, I can do this and I can apply it as a system. That was only when I started getting excited about it. And so at that point, that was when it became, okay, now I'm excited. Now I want to spend more time on it. Now I want to keep, doing the same thing over and over again. And yeah, I'm still here. So
I want to thank our sponsor, Centerpoint, for sponsoring the Wall Street Coach podcast. And if you're ready to experience 60 days commission free and their exceptional customer service, then please use our link to check them out. Now back to our podcast. It's amazing. And thank you for being so transparent about that, because I think a lot of people don't really remember the depth of that discomfort and pain and fear, they don't talk about it. And I think so many traders go through it, and yet they feel so isolated. Did you feel this? It's because your dad suggested this. Did you have his support and or other support that helped you navigate? I mean, 2.5 years, it sounds like, a little over that. So what kept you getting up every day? First of all, raising a son is like a full-time job. And going back at this, was it the emotional support of loved ones? Was it your determination? What do you attribute to your need, your situation financially? What were those factors?
Well, yes, I am very determined for sure. So there's that. I didn't want to have to go back to my son's father. It was very toxic and bad situation for both of us. And so I knew that I had to do something on my own. And, my dad, it was one of those things where I left my whole life. I left my son's father. I left my house. I left everything that I had. I left my job. I didn't have anywhere to go but go home. So I went home and, my dad was just basically like, hey, you know what? You can live here and you can learn how to trade. And, we'll see how it goes. But if you're not going to do that, then you need to go get a job. Yeah. And so, that was my motivation.
that'll motivate anybody. But how awesome he gave you that runway to try to learn that and make it work. That's amazing. I presume he has been a trader or investor himself.
Yes, he's been a trader for probably a good 20 years, an investor for 30 years or longer. And so, for him, he's a very well-versed options trader. And so he knows that, certainly it is possible. But even if you ask him now, he would say that he would never have imagined I would have stuck with it.
Oh, wow. Well, that alone is a nice, well, take that, Dad. I did stick with it.
Well, once you already have 2 years into it, it's kind of like, am I really going to quit now?
Yeah,
Exactly. You're so close. And so, I definitely did have, family support and everything. And I was working part-time, I would work after the market hours, actually would do photography, and I would take my son. I had like a baby backpack, and I would take my son around working for Zillow doing photography so that I could be available during the trading hours. And I did all kinds of crazy things to, still make money while I was embarrassingly living at home when I was 25. So,
but hey, what's embarrassing is somebody that doesn't give it their all. In my opinion, not somebody who gives everything and then some. It's so inspiring, Danielle. What a story.
I was very determined. So
it's incredible, like what we're capable of when we really give ourselves, these kind of goalposts that we're going to figure it out. And that's what it sounds like you did. And just you doing that for yourself, knowing that there was no plan B. Sometimes I think that's what works.
Oh, absolutely. And, my dad had told me my entire life, never depend on anyone. Even if you get married, you never know what could happen to your spouse. They could die, they could whatever. Yep. And so, I always had that in the back of my mind when I was a teacher, and I thought, oh, this is going to be fine. My husband makes more money and I can have a lower paying job because I have a husband. Well, that you don't want to be trapped in a situation that's unhealthy for you, which is what ended up happening. So then, of course, I decided to completely switch gears and shift into an industry where I would be able to make more money and, most importantly, be able to have control over my time and over, our futures. So
for sure.
Ultimately, very happy that happened. It was a very challenging time period, obviously, but I know that everybody who gets into trading, they have that challenging time period. Trading is just a really unique industry that you can get into because you can jump into it no matter where you are in life. You can be a broke single mom. You can be someone who's retired and who has invested for a long time. You can, be someone that's just in college. And so that's kind of what's terrifying about it, is that anyone can open an account and just start doing it. And so that's why, we struggle, right? And it's, of course, everybody wants to do it because what do they want? They want money, right?
Yeah.
But then when you're chasing the money, that's what gives you the strong emotions. And so it is challenging. And, if you can learn how to get through that beginning phase, because in the beginning phase, you're going to lose money. There's no way about it. You're not going to start, being a trader and just all of a sudden make money. It's not realistic. So you have to figure out how to get through that and continue onwards.
What's your opinion on paper trading? What do you feel about that in general? A lot of different opinions out there and different circumstances that warrant those opinions. But what's your take on that?
So I actually paper traded for 2 years, and I feel like that was how I was able to hold on to my money. And people all the time will say, "Oh, you should never paper trade. There's no emotion involved." And well, I can tell you I had emotion involved. So I personally feel like that was what kept me in the game, because during that time period in the beginning when you are losing money, because especially if you're options trading, I mean, you need to learn the strategies. You need to learn how calls and puts function and how spreads and butterflies function. And you don't want to be losing your own money while you're trying to figure out, what expiration series you should use. And so for me personally, I found it to be immensely helpful.
Mhm.
I always recommend people paper trade in the beginning, especially if you're coming into it undercapitalized, because there's just no reason for you to, lose the money that you have when you're trying to learn.
Yep. Yep. And because you spoke just of your own hustle of having some revenue generating areas while trying to learn the trading, what would your advice be to a trader who, let's say, has a full-time job and trades on the side, has their schedule set up so they could do that? And let's say they're 2, 3 years in, maybe they have consistency. Maybe they're kind of at that pivot where they're like, should I give up my day job so I can do this full time? What would you say are the important questions or measuring sticks they need to use to determine that choice?
Well, I think it just depends what kind of side income you have. I mean, for me personally, you definitely need that when you're starting out, because the thing is that if you don't have additional income, you're just going to be even more stressed out, and you're going to try to force trades that aren't working, that aren't there, because you need the money, right? Because you have to pay bills. So, there's always people asking me, oh, shouldn't I just quit and go at this full time? And it's like, I have found that if you keep an additional source of income while you're working on perfecting your trading, I shouldn't even say perfecting, because it's never going to be perfect, right?
Right.
But that is generally when you're going to do the best. And you have to also keep in mind too that the market changes. You might get really good at trading a bullish trend, and then all of a sudden we have a volatile market or a bear market. And so, I do think that it's good to maintain employment, or maintain whatever, some kind of side hustle,
Yeah.
because you just don't really know what's going to happen. But as far as goalposts are concerned, I mean, you need to think about obviously how much money you need to survive. You need to think about how big your trading account is. That's one of the biggest factors, because, you can only make so much with the money that you have. So, if you have like a $20,000 account and you're trying to survive all year long on it, that's going to be pretty hard, right? If you have a much larger account and you're selling covered calls or something like that, then that's something that could be doable. So it just really depends what your expenses are, how much money you need to survive, if you need things like employer sponsored health insurance. But in general, in life, I'm always a fan of multiple streams of income. So even if your trading is going great, it's never bad to have a backup.
I want to thank our sponsor, Centerpoint. It's the trading platform where active traders thrive and receive exceptional customer service. If you're ready to experience 60 days of no commissions, sign up using our link. Now back to our podcast. Not only you're a trader and an investor and a market analyst, but you're also a commentator, which of course now I've watched a lot of you on your YouTube channel and on X. Right now, Danielle is the VP of Options at Simpler Trading, where she runs trades and analysis in the trading room, teaches classes and webinars, and writes regularly for fivestartrader.com. And you can also find her, of course, in the media. She's often on CNBC, Fox News, TraderTV Live, and Stockcharts. So talk a little bit about your style of trading, and do you ever go beyond this specific style?
Oh, definitely. So when I first started out, I primarily just focused on the trend, right? Because when you're new, it's going to be much easier to follow a trend than it is to, pick tops and bottoms and all that kind of stuff. So that was primarily what I started out with. And I started with consolidation breakouts. So, you follow a trend, you identify consolidation, you look for a breakout. And then over time, I learned a variety of new strategies. I like to trade earnings now. I really focus on pre and post earnings moves. I'll also focus on overnight earnings moves, especially because in the options market, there's just a lot of opportunity with selling premium. After a couple of years, I decided, why am I not investing long term? And so I started building long-term stock accounts using my longer term analysis. So that's something that I enjoy quite a bit, working on that. And, I've just worked on expanding my options trading. In the beginning, I did simple calls. I sold a lot of credit spreads. And then over time, I got into the more complex spreads. I do a lot of iron butterflies, iron condors. And so, I'm just always working on improving and learning more and taking in new strategies because it's never ending.
For sure. So what would you say is your edge as a woman trader?
It really just goes back to the patterns. I feel like I'm really good at recognizing patterns in the market, and I also focus on low risk, high reward trades. And so I feel like a lot of the time, people want to be more flashy. But for me, since I started out and I was, broke and I didn't want to risk a lot of money, I got to be really good at like just trading small accounts. And so, people get into trading and they're like, oh, I have all this money and I want to trade big and I'm making a $10,000 trade and this and that. And it's like, doesn't matter how much money you have, you can lose it just as quickly. If you start out and you say, okay, it doesn't matter if I have 100 grand in my brand new trading account, I'm going to make $500 trades and see if that's something I can do.
Yeah.
You're going to hold on to that money fast, for a longer time.
Yeah.
So I feel like trading small accounts is something that I've always been good at. And I don't really let like the ego get to me where it's like, oh, I need to make these giant trades, because if you're continually making trades and you're doing something well, then it adds up.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like you're just very conscious of your ego and not letting that hijack you as you manage your trading account.
That's the idea. I try very hard.
When your ego does get the upper hand, what does that look like, if you're willing to share?
Yeah, there's definitely been some times, I get caught up in the hype, and especially with the other guys in the trading room, and everybody's like, "Ooh, look at my big trade and look at my big trade." And it's sometimes I get tempted.
Of
So there
course.
was one time, oh my gosh, it was the worst trade ever. So Tilray, I hate. It was when the weed stocks were popular. I don't know. I think it was
Okay.
like 2021,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I was doing my regular, normal small account growth thing where I had already, I think I'd already like doubled my account
Wow.
in it was a short amount. It was like by February, so it was a pretty short amount of time, but I was doing it like slowly,
Hmm. Yeah.
trade by trade by trade. It wasn't like one big trade. And then, of course, the other guys in the trading room they were all just throwing all their money at Tilray, and it was exploding. It had really high short interest. It was probably like 30% short float. And so generally when a stock is exploding and it has high short float, it's going to just take off. Like GameStop, right? Everybody got really excited about GameStop. This was right around the same time. And so I thought, man, I already doubled my account. So let me just this one time, let me make a huge trade on this. Just this once, I'll do it.
Famous last words.
All the other guys are doing it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I don't remember how much actual, money it was,
Oh
but
God.
I mean, I pretty much risked all my profits like for the year
Oh,
on the trade. And that was the last time I've ever done anything that dumb. So then the next day, instead of it, causing a massive short squeeze, it gapped down like 50%. So I lost all my profits for the year and
brutal.
then some. And then I was in the red.
Oh my God. Brutal. Brutal.
Yeah. And it was the last time I ever did that.
Yep. One and
So,
done. One and done
yeah.
is what I'm hearing,
I,
Danielle.
Yeah, and the other trader, the traders that were following us were mad. The other traders were mad. I
Yeah,
was mad that I
sure.
let, you know, the excitement of the other guys get to me.
Yeah.
And I broke my rules, just
Yeah.
sticking with, because that was so many trades that I did that just went up in flames because of
Absolutely.
one trade.
Absolutely. Powerfully said. Powerfully said. And that diligence and your consistency, gets sacrificed. Be just this once. It's the just
Yeah.
this once.
Well, and then, also that just took me to such a terrible psychological
Mm,
level
yeah.
because you spend all those days and all that time making that
Yes.
money and you're doing well. And then all of a sudden you are in a hole now. And so
Yeah.
that's the hardest part because at that point, once it's like mid-February and you're in a hole, you have it kind of breaks something in you because
Yeah.
you now every trade that you're going into, it's not house money, right? Which is
Right.
why throwing all the money on it to begin with didn't
Yeah.
really seem like a big deal because it was house money. But then
It's,
once you don't have that anymore,
yeah.
then you're trying to climb out of the hole. And then everything that you do, you're second guessing yourself.
Yeah.
So what you actually have to do at that moment, which is what I did, was I took a 2 week break.
Wow. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Because
How hard was that for you to take that break?
I mean, I was pretty upset with myself. So
Yep.
my
Excellent.
husband, I went and told my husband, he said, there's no crying in trading.
He's right, but it also sounds like you were like, okay, so then I have to take 2 weeks so I can go cry.
Yeah, I think that was the last time that I've actually cried
Yeah.
because of my trading. But yeah, it was just a
Ouch.
bad
Ouch.
decision overall. And yeah, I mean, I will never forget that and I'm
Yep.
not going to do it again.
Yep. That's it. You learned the
And
lesson, but luckily you live to be able to trade another day. Some people that just once wipes them out and they can't.
well, and that's the exact problem is so at that time frame, that was when, Roaring Kitty was,
Yeah,
making
totally.
millions of dollars and everybody's coming into the trading room asking about GameStop and, they just want to make $1 million overnight on just one trade. They
Totally.
don't want to go through the pain and the suffering of learning for a
Exactly.
year or two
Exactly.
years.
You
And
got it.
so, um,
So I have,
we
so I have more questions for you, but we're going to have to end it here because we have to get to our XPs. So please, whoever is listening to this, realize it's a two-part conversation, and part two is going to be on X. So we're going to hop over there now. Thank you, though, for coming on my podcast, Danielle. This was such a joy.
Oh, you're amazing. I'm so glad you invited me. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you have subscribed to the Wall Street Coach podcast. And if you haven't, it's time to do so. See you on the next podcast.